There we go. The broadcast is live. Yeah, there's a lot of comic strips like The Far Side in the last. When did The Far Side stop? In the 90s?
Late 90s, I think.
Did it stop before or after Calvin?
After, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to say before, but I'm not sure.
Calvin was
remember it so long
85,
ago.
95.
Let's see.
Calvin
Let's
only
use
lasted for
the
10 years, right?
Technology we have to find out.
Calvin was
Yeah, I think Calvin lasted for 10 years.
that Calvin is. There's still no humor like Calvin. I mean, you can imitate it, but
The first run of The Far Side ended January 1st, 1995.
okay.
Let's see
And
what
Calvin was probably right around the same time. Calvin and Hobbes is just such a classic. Like I said, the
Wow. December
When was that?
31st, 1995.
wow, they both ended the same year.
Yeah, about almost, not quite a year, about 11 months apart. Yeah,
Okay, so the Far Side was the beginning of '95.
yeah, January, and then Calvin Hobbes ended in December of that year.
Wow. Yeah, because I always say the to me the biggest the best comic strips ever are Calvin and Hobbes, The Far Side, Peanuts, and Doonesbury. Those to me are the four that are in a class. And I've since added Gasoline Alley to that list, but I only read that 10 years ago. But Gasoline Alley is as good as those other four to me.
For me,
But-
the big three for me would be Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, and Prince Valiant.
Prince Valiant, okay. Matter of fact,
Style, man, that Hal Foster art is just something about it.
there was somebody on Twitter who brought up the to me the last great Peanuts storyline was when Rerun, who's the little brother of Lucy and Linus, became a basement cartoonist. I think it was in the year it's in the year 2000. And it's just this brilliant. I mean, because Peanuts really hadn't been brilliant in a couple of decades. Like Peanuts from the '80s and '90s, you know, it's all right, but it's not like Peanuts from the '50s, '60s, and
Kind of like
the
The Simpsons in that regard.
Yeah, it's still. I still like The Simpsons. There's still a brilliant episode every now and then, but in the beginning it was different. But the Rerun as a basement cartoonist was just the most brilliant sort of strip he had in a while, because he didn't know the term underground cartoonist, but that's what he was trying to be. He was making and showing them to his teacher too, all these cartoons that don't quite that you shouldn't be showing to your teacher when you're in the, I don't know, second grade, whatever grade he was in. But if you can find there, like the book, I don't have to reread them. There was maybe a couple of dozen strips in that thing, but it's in a book called Peanuts 2000, I think is the name of it. And it was like the last. I think it may have been the last collection of Peanut stuff before Sparky there died. And I didn't know the whole time I'm reading Peanuts that there's no L in his name. Charles Schultz. It's not Schultz. It's Schutz.
No, it's
There's an L, but there's
Schultz.
no T.
There's no
no
T.
T?
Yeah,
It's Schultz, right.
Schultz, not Schultz.
Yeah.
Like what the? Everyone says Schultz.
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced in German.
It isn't here right now is a good example of.
No, but it's how you pronounce it in German.
Yeah, that's how you pronounce it in German with the.
Yeah,
You
the
pronounce it the
Z.
same way, spelled
Yeah,
either way. You pronounce it the same. It's Schultz.
Yeah, the Z is always pronounced Z.
Okay. Look at that.
Ah,
Good evening, Line the Com. Pilsner, Lager, and Stout.
I know which one I am now because I'm wearing a shirt right now that's got artwork by William Stout on it. So I have to.
Ooh.
I am not a beer guy, but I've taken a liking to Weissbier.
I've never had a Pilsner lager or stout, but I can be one, I guess.
I'm a root beer guy instead of.
You're a Bud Light.
I'm a teetotaler, so I've never drank.
Yeah, I don't like the taste or smell of alcohol, which is good because if I did, I'd weigh 600 pounds.
600 pounds.
Some friends of mine recently went to Belgium, and boy, they really like Belgian beer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing they drink in Belgium is beer.
Wow.
I think that started at 4 or 5 years old or something.
They had a field day there with beer.
The guy who created Torgal 13 and Largo Winch also created a comic about beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was never published in English. The translation would be The Brewmasters, and it's a family drama about beer making families who are in competition. It lasted for 8 graphic novels.
Wow.
That doesn't surprise me. There's certain subjects I'm surprised that there aren't comics based on.
At least in Japan, not
Europe.
But
That's a whole.
I'm not surprised there's not a comic based on brewing in the U.S.
Well, there should be.
Well,
There should
not
be.
directly, but there was a character by Mike Pascal that was called Brewhead, and his head was just shaped like a beer glass.
Yeah, but see, nobody thinks, okay, I'm going to make a comic about the business of making beer and how it affects the people who are in this business. They think, man, I want to make a comic about beer, so I'm either going to make The Adventures of Beer Man, or I'm going to be a Beer Face, the guy whose head is a beer mug.
But the equivalent of that was already done in Too Much Coffee Man.
Right, I was just saying that. Too Much Coffee Man, that reminded me of.
Yeah, but you either go for a fake superhero or something, or making fun of the thing. There's nothing serious about it.
No. The Mundane Adventures of Dishman.
But it don't have to be mundane. It's just called The Brewmasters, and it's a drama. Normal people will like it.
I don't know about
moonshine fiction in the U.S., but not in comics.
Where Tim and I live, Tim's a little closer to it than I am, but that is the moonshine capital of the world.
Yeah.
Down in very southern part of Virginia and northern part of North Carolina, that's moonshine central.
Run and shine out of Alabama.
I've never tasted it, but I smelled it once, and boy, it's some high taste stuff.
Yeah, I've never had moonshine
I think
either.
Elon Musk could use it for rocket fuel, to be honest.
See, I don't know. I'm a teetotaler, but I've been around drinking friends all my life.
Same thing here.
But I've always seen like people when they're drinking moonshine. It's like I don't know if it's actual moonshine or that's the labeling. It's like how real can this moonshine be when it's in a bottle that says with a fancy label that says moonshine?
That's not the real stuff. The real stuff is in a mason jar.
Mm-hmm. Moonshine by Azzarello and Rizzo. Is that another one of the Vertigo ones?
I think it was Image, wasn't it?
It was Image? That's right. I remember that one. I may have read an issue of that.
I have yet to read anything written by Brian Azzarello that I've liked.
Well, he has that tendency to become violent just because he feels he's supposed to.
I just find I'm generally not a fan of his either, because I find his use of slang annoys me. Only because it sounds fake to me. I have no idea if the slang he's using is authentic or not, but to me it sounds fake. So that's like the only two Azzarello things I liked were both drawn by Richard Corbin. I think that his Hellraiser and Cage. Those are the two Brian Azzarello things I liked. And like I said, it could be there's a good chance that it's Corbin. Yeah, recent stuff. I think Now they said it was Image. I think I read an issue. I may have read an issue or two of Moonshine.
I like his wife's material a whole lot, but Brian himself not so much.
Who's his wife?
Jill Thompson.
Jill Thompson. Okay. I've only seen a little of her stuff. I haven't seen a lot.
I like her stuff.
The thing is, when you mix Azzarello and Risso, they've worked together for so long that you feel like Risso's style is appropriate for the story that Azzarello is telling.
Yeah,
and he's got that thing. He has that type of violence that Garth Ennis has, but he doesn't try to be funny like Garth Ennis thinks he is.
I just don't like it. It's most. I had like a few trades of 100 bullets, and I only made it like a third of the way through the first one before giving them to a friend. A friend gave them to me. I gave them to another friend because I would just like it. It's just the slang he uses just leaves me cold. I just don't buy into. I don't buy into it that people talk like that. He may be. There may be people who, criminals who talk in that Brian Azzarello slang, but somehow I doubt it.
One thing I'd also noticed too is like you talk about slang and dialogue. So many people laud Quentin Tarantino for having realistic dialogue. Well, yeah, but he got all that stuff from noir movies made back in the 40s.
Yeah, I don't know how. I wouldn't say it was realistic, but yeah, I know what they mean. He's got very stylized dialogue, but a lot of it's sort of.
If you do your homework, you realize where he picked all that stuff up from.
Oh yeah, he is one of the most movie-influenced movie writers and directors ever. My wife loved Azzarello's Wonder Woman run with Cliff Chang. Everyone, I've always heard good things about the Cliff Chang art, but I haven't read any of that stuff.
The last time I read Wonder Woman was back when Brian Boland was doing the covers. It was out the early 90s.
Yeah. The last time I read Wonder Woman regularly was when Gene Colan was doing it.
That was a little while ago.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
But I don't like pre-crisis Wonder Woman. I don't like
Nobody does.
I don't like Themyscira pre-crisis. I don't like all the Amazons pre-crisis. I don't like any of that pre-crisis.
Like the problem
going to kill me, but I don't like Crisis.
Forget pre-crisis. I've always said Wonder Woman has always been a more important pop culture figure than comic book. There are no classic runs on Wonder Woman. The best stuff people always say is the George Perez stuff, but everybody's like, it's good. The best, and before that, there's just nothing. I mean, all through Wonder Woman's been around since the 40s.
Yeah.
There's just no classic runs on Wonder Woman just because it's never been that important to comic.
Even Marston was just trying to get his erotic fiction out of the way.
And I have to say, what's the guy's name? H.R. Peter?
Yeah.
Who's the guy who drew Wonder Woman? Right? He's one of the most underrated guys in comics, I have to say. Because his Wonder Woman art really carried that book. If you ever go back and look at that stuff, it's beautiful. I think without him as an artist, I don't know if Wonder Woman would be such an icon. But no one ever mentions him.
Yeah.
I mean, he
do
never...
you think he had what you described as charm?
He may have. Now that you mention it, he may have a lot of charm to his artwork. Now that I think about it, because it really was nice, and I guess charming is a good word for it. Yeah,
I kind of like his sense of movement. It's pretty dynamic. It's not that that energetic realism that Kirby did, but it's somewhere between a Mike Sekowsky and the Kirby, I'd say.
He was an older guy too, so I think his stuff was very comic strippy, but not really. He definitely kept up with stuff, kind of. But like I said, I think he's very underrated in that no one ever mentions him. Probably because he died in like the end of the 40s.
There's a lot of artists that really don't get their due that should have.
Yeah. But he's like the first Wonder Woman artist, so he should be. James Best used to have acting classes during the improv night. He was coming up with material for Reservoir Dogs. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny that he puts in there James Best, of course, Roscoe and Dukes of Hazzard.
Ah,
I prefer to remember him in The Attack of the Killer Shrews.
okay. I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's an MST classic too.
Yeah,
but
I may have seen it on MST.
Yeah,
But,
we never imported the MST 3K format, and I would have liked to see it. Like the version of the Sci-Fi Channel that we have here is bullshit, and it's always right now. It's always repeating.
So is ours.
Yeah, yeah, but it doesn't even have anything that it's so bad it's good. It's just bad.
I remember when I think I was still in high school at the time, actually, and I got a letter in the mail, and I'm not sure how they got my address. They probably got it from some database somewhere. That the Science Fiction Channel is going to launch. I was like, hey, this is really cool. But the only two shows they had when they first started were Buck Rogers and The Incredible Hulk. And they would play them back to back to back to back all the time until they got a few other shows added on over time.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when it first launched, I'm like, this is great. And I would look at that these days and like, man, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And speaking
when it
of Wonder
started
Woman,
here, it was Xena and Knight Rider. Why Knight Rider? Because they have a talking car? That counts as science fiction?
I guess
You
so.
think so you didn't get the knockoff Knight Rider that
After Star Wars, anything could be science fiction. But speaking of Wonder Woman, not quite, Promethea, I just realized. I picked up Echolands #1. Let me show you this.
Is that Little Red Riding Hood?
Yeah, it's Little Red Riding Hood. This is by J.H. Williams, and it's sideways.
I like it just for that reason.
They give you a nice thick cover, too, so it holds up the book.
Where's J.H. Williams trying to be Greg Land?
No.
J.H. Williams is a hell of a lot better than Greg Land.
Yeah, but I don't know.
The design on it is so... It's just so J.H. Williams designy, the storytelling. And the storytelling is so different than a normal. He even mentions in the back that this took him longer than he thought it would, because telling the story vertically took a lot more time than he thought. And I could see that, because sometimes the panels sometimes you read the panel all the way across the top, which is a long way, and he moves your eye around the page. I mean, he's just such a master at design.
Right.
That the way he moved, there was only like once or twice that he didn't quite get my eye moving around the page once, which is a really low failure rate for such a book as this. Right. Most of the time it was just like, whoa. So I have to say I really enjoyed it. I mean, the story was nothing special. It was magic stuff. I guess she's supposed to be Little Red, but that is, I can see what he means. That is kind of Greg Landish, his Little Red Riding Hood drawings, in that it looks like it's kind of from a photo.
Yeah.
So I can see what you mean. Now,
but even the pose of on the cover, it doesn't look as good as J.H. Williams should look.
Yeah, that cover's not good. I mean, that's not. I've seen a lot better covers from J.H. Williams.
It's not great.
It is not. It's not terrible or anything. This is not good either. The opening splash, which is all explanation. I mean, after seeing this cover and this, because I saw some of the art online and put the first issue on my pull list. I'm going to put the whole thing on my pull list now because I enjoyed it. But after this cover and this opening splash, I was kind of disappointed. But then it got good. It was really good. So I have to say, it was the art mostly. It takes place in some world where there's magic. He agrees with you that the cover is great.
Yeah.
I think there's also a sort of stiffness to the figure.
Yeah, and that's
Comes
typical Land.
sometimes with photographs. Yeah, that's a Craig Land stiffness. Though I think my favorite Greg Land is his cross-gen work.
Mm-hmm.
His Sojourn work is really good.
If it took so long for him to finish the comic, I imagine that if he got better as he was doing it, and he probably even created the cover first.
Yeah, he said he has 6 issues done too, so or he's in the middle of the 6th issue, one or the other. So they're well ahead. Yeah, because I imagine you're right. They had to get the cover done first, and I expect the next cover to be better.
And retailers are going to hate that book just because it's formatted horizontally.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
My retailer was already like, "Oh man, I'm not going to sell as many of them because it's horizontal." He's like, that was the first thought in his head.
Yeah.
I know what he means too.
We don't have that problem with off-format stuff. Whenever somebody wants to do it.
I was also, as I was reading it, I was like, wow, I want to see an oversized hardcover version of this. Because did you guys read Frank Miller's 300?
Yep.
Most. I haven't read all of it. But
hold on a second. Let me get that back here. I think it's.
I didn't read the Xerxes series.
Yeah, that one I didn't either. I can't remember if I bought it or if I borrowed it.
I don't think I think his work went seriously downhill after Sin City.
I think this is excellent.
I remember that.
I think this is excellent, but only in this format. As you can see here, this is 2 comic books wide. So I don't think I got all of them. I only picked up a few of the issues from Dark Horse, and each page on Dark Horse was a double-page spread. So this was 2 pages in the comic book, right side, left side. And I remember reading it. I was kind of like, it's okay, but I didn't really like that. And I was like, I don't know why he made everything read across as a double-page spread. But when I finally got to read this, I was like, wow, it is so much better reading it in this format. Because this is the way he designed it. This is the way he made it look. So if you ever get a chance to read 300, read it in this format rather than the original comics, because it just works.
To show how much book design can contribute to the visual things.
Yeah, how and he clearly did all the storytelling in this format, not in because like in the comic format, it was a double-page spread. There were staples in the middle of every, Imagine this page with staples in the middle of it, and there's that bend to it. It was, and I thought it was okay in that format. Not even okay enough to track. It's like I would buy an issue. Well, I didn't even have it on my pull list. I would buy an issue on the stand if I had an extra few bucks that week. So I have like issues 2 through 4 or something like that, or maybe 2, 4, and 6 or something. But this is, format matters. It really does. Like those, what is it? Those Terry Dodson books I've shown before. Read something. Yeah, when I read those in the oversized format, I enjoyed them so much more.
Yeah, Flesh Publications is coming out with some Terry Dodson art books.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
What was the other one you did that you liked better in the other format? Was it Adventure Man?
Yes, Adventure Man. That was the other one. I bought the first issue and was disappointed with it. Once again, it's Terry Dodson artwork, I think. It was artwork I like. And then I saw they were coming out with an oversized album like this, and I liked Red One. That was the other Terry Dodson one. I think that was Matt Fraction maybe in Terry Dodson. I can't remember. Maybe, but I liked it so since I liked the Red One so much in the larger format. I'm like, I'm just gonna get it. I'm gonna try Adventure Time or Adventure Man in that form, and I liked it so much better.
I saw a French European album format Hellboy book once, and I was like, oh my god, why don't they publish that here like that?
And speaking of format, he bought a Datsun sketchbook from
yeah, the
Flesk. It was
sketchbook
miniature. Wow.
The sketchbooks are small, but they'll come out with a bigger format book.
Hey, Damien, I thought you'd be watching Sam's show. Sam's Tangled Web is live right now.
Yeah, I have the next one. Maybe Sleepy can give me an answer on. Have you read this issue yet? I think he collects Once and Future. Another good. This is the one that they're fighting like the woman who people call Grandma Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right, and her grandson are fighting these creatures who are from myths of the British Isles and stuff. Like King Arthur is coming back, except he's a bad guy. So is Merlin. Sorry, I'm watching you, Bellow.
You probably are.
I am sorry, I'm watching myself too.
He got it. Have you read it yet, Sleepy? Because it's like at the end of the last, and one of the things was if he hasn't read it yet, so I won't spoil it for you. But hello there. But at the end of the last story arc, it's like she works to keep all this mystical stuff quiet, because if too many people believe in it, it becomes reality, becomes more powerful, kind of thing. Well, the British government has like this branch that keeps track of the people who keep the mystic stuff on the down low. It was like the latest prime minister there wanted to blow the lid off this secret shenanigans going on. So he ended up at the end of the last story arc going on TV and blowing the lid off this secret shenanigans of people who fight this mystic stuff, which made the mystic world just kind of more powerful and become England and Scotland and I guess Ireland. I don't know. So they're all they're not living in the same world we live in now. They live in this fairy tale world with monsters. And this is the first issue where the fairy tale world is dominant and they're trying to figure out what to do. But at the end of the issue, someone shows up. And I don't know who that someone is. I'm like, yeah, you ever read a comic you haven't read before? Like it happens with me for like if I pick up a random Marvel comic. And at the end of the issue, the big reveal is somebody shows up and it's supposed to be a dramatic moment. And but you don't know who that person is because you haven't read any of the other comics.
Right.
I haven't even, I know.
That happened a lot in the late 80s, early 90s because some guy you've never heard of shows up with claws even bigger than Wolverine's, and you're supposed to be impressed. But then the issue ends, and it continues next issue.
It's like someone showed up at the end of this issue, and I'm supposed to know who he is, but I don't. And I'm like, I read 19 issues of this. How do I not know who this guy is? And they say who he is, but it makes no sense. I'm like, do I have all my characters mixed up? I just got very confused by the last page.
Gotcha.
I was surprised Don Mara came back. He's also drawing Batman. Okay, he's the artist on this, Don Mara. And I have to say, Tamara Bonvillain is doing a great job on the color too. I really liked the color. I know I've noticed this in a lot of comics lately, including that adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird I read. A lot of people are doing so. Well, she's not quite doing, but this dappled sunshine look. He's doing a little fairy dappled sunshine. But I'm like, I noticed a lot of colorists now doing this dappled sunshine look. I think it was in Homesick Pilots too.
Talking about dappled sunshine, Charles Vess is really good at doing dappled sunshine in pencil.
Ah.
And it'll just, you see the original pencil art before he inks it colors, and it's like, damn, Charles, just leave it that way.
The problem with printing a story with pencil art is that often the penciler doesn't think of it as finished. But the main problem is the black areas.
Kerry Nord's work on Conan, they shot some of those directly from pencil.
Right.
Ink.
He did it.
And I think with more modern printing technology, it comes out better than it did in the past. But
No. But the problem I mean, the thing I mean is when you're a lot of times people think the sketches have more energy than the finishes, and one of the reasons sometimes they do. And sometimes genuinely, and sometimes just because of the nature of pencil, is more exploratory.
Right.
And when you've got a big black area, like in pencil, that you actually fill in by going, that gives that black area a lot of energy.
Right.
The problem is when you're doing storytelling, you don't want that area to have a lot of energy. You want that area to be a big, solid black, a mass. And when you reproduce from pencils and the penciler doesn't quite realize that, it's like you're looking at all that energy where he filled in the black instead of the energy of the drawing where he wants you to look. And that's what happens a lot with penciled stuff.
Have you ever looked up artist preliminary drawings before they get published?
Oh, yeah.
There was, getting back to Flesh Publications, which Damien mentioned earlier, they put up a preliminary that Mark Schultz did for an upcoming book that's a Robert E. Howard. It's a frontispiece thing, but it's just pencils and it's preliminary, but that is better looking than 99% of everybody else's finished work.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is a preliminary?
Yeah.
My God.
There's a lot of guys now who ink with the pencil. They've learned that. So it takes a little more time, but yeah, I said, I always find it funny when I'm supposed to be shocked. I'm like, I don't know the guy, but I don't expect it in the comic I'm reading 19 issues of. That's what's just funny about it. Yeah, the dapple effect a lot too. There's a lot of that going on. Coloring done anymore using inks it's almost all computer work.
Depends.
99% of the time it is.
Yeah, it depends on who's doing the original art.
Yeah, there are some people there are some old school and even some new school. Matt Kint's stuff was all watercolor. I thought he was doing watercolor effect, like for mind management. I thought he was doing a watercolor effect, but no, he actually watercolored that stuff with his wife.
Charles Best, unless he's doing a painting, if he's doing like a comic art, it's done in colored inks.
Oh, Craig Russell is an 80-page adult black and white coloring book coming out. Wow. Craig Russell is one of the guys who knows how to make pencils the finished product.
I think the last episode we did, we kind of gushed about Craig Russell quite a bit.
Yeah, he definitely.
Yeah, Craig's up there.
There are people who, if they didn't go directly into ink, they didn't spend a lot of time in pencil. I used to watch
Hollywood is
Mark Teixeira in the 90s. Mm-hmm. He used to be in the bullpen all the time working, and he'd do pencils fairly lightly. I mean, not even there were more layouts than pencils, and then he'd go in with the inks and the whiteout. He'd use whiteout like white paint. Mm-hmm. So he'd just be going back and forth.
Did it.
What was that?
Joe Manilli did it. He had very loose layouts.
Yeah.
And then he would ink all the details directly.
Yeah. A lot of guys
where just went straight to ink.
Yeah, a lot of guys who were inking their own stuff can do that. Yeah, I think Lemire might be watercolor too, because once again I thought he was doing, because his stuff looks so much like Matt Kint's drawing. The two they have a very similar technique. Once again, I thought he was doing computerized watercolor, but he might not be, because Lemire isn't. So Charles Vess isn't doing comics anymore, is he?
He has. I've seen some pages. He has a graphic novel that he wants to do. Mm-hmm. It's just that he's so busy doing covers and illustrations and everything. He's been busy for years, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. But he does have a graphic novel project he's working on, and I've seen the pencil pages from it. They're not inked, but they're pencil. He's also got a prose novel coming out too.
Mm-hmm. Joe Maneely was a good artist. I remember wondering who he was as a kid because I think I saw his stuff in the Marvel reprint westerns.
Okay.
That's the only place I ever saw his stuff as a kid.
Yeah, I think his westerns and war comics especially were much even better than Black Knight. Black Knight was Maneely trying to do a riff on Prince Valiant. So you have a very specific style that he was trying to emulate. Yeah. But when he was doing war comics, you can see it on the covers especially, and that's when his work was shining. It was all about the detail. There are covers that he produced after the Comics Code was adopted. They were Carl Burgos was the art director at the time. And Burgos would have to fix the covers whenever there was a problem with the Comics Code. But sometimes all the material will get licensed to a foreign publisher, and there are Australian comics reprinting Atlas material where you see the original covers as Joe Maneely drew them.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I always get a little sad talking about Joe Maneely because I don't know if it's a fear or one of the last ways I want to die is on a commute. I've commuted into New York City enough times to go. I just don't want to die on a commute. That just seems like such a waste. I don't know why. That's how he died he fell off a commuter train. What was that?
So it kills your soul on that commute. You just don't want your body to go along with it, right?
Right. A commute is bad enough. I don't want to die on it. Oh man. What about oil paint? I have seen some guys. I can't like some of these. I can't think of who they are. Some of these current, some of these current Marvel cover guys who I thought were digital actually made oil paintings, and I'm like guys who kind of do an Art Germ type style. And I think Art Germ is all digital, but they did them in oil paint. I was like, wow, I didn't realize they were doing that because that style seems easier to do digitally.
Yeah, there's still a few guys that do paintings. Like Alex Ross is probably the best known example, but
yeah.
John J. Muth and Kent Williams did watercolors, right?
Yeah.
And there's
Did they draw first? Because it looks like it's all painted directly.
They did a little. There was a technique. I forget.
They used a similar technique that Jeff Jones did. We create like a really faint, almost like a penciled preliminary.
Light pencil drawing.
Right.
And the guy who did that Enemy Ace graphic novel, what was his name for DC?
George Pratt.
Yeah, George Pratt. Yeah, that kind of looks painted directly as well. I doubt that there's any pencil in there. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah,
Pratt was before the digital age, so yeah.
John Van Fleet was part of that kind of movement too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if Joe hadn't died, he could have been there. Yeah, he would have been one of the Marvel mainstays of the superhero stuff. That's for sure. That's what everyone says. He was good. He was Stan Lee's go-to guy all through the 50s.
And I still maintain that if he hadn't died, I'm not sure Kirby would have had room for Kirby to work there.
Yeah, he might not have. Maneely was that prolific. You're right. New comic coming out from AWA in November called Knighted, illustrated by Teixeira. Okay. Homage cover to Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, I haven't seen any new tech stuff in a while. Does Francis Menapool do watercolor? It looks like I haven't seen his work in a while. I don't know.
I'm not familiar with that name.
Yeah, you know what it is? Computers have gotten so good at doing natural media that a lot of times you can't tell. There are certain tells, especially most of the tells you can see in digital stuff are when they use light colors over dark colors. That's how you can tell it's digital.
I remember a few years ago.
You can't do that in like watercolor.
Justin Sweet did a King Cole, the Robert E. Howard character, painting for a book. And it's all digital, but it's got brush strokes. I mean, if you looked at it,
if you
knew it was digital, you can't tell.
You like I said, you can do the only way you can tell on some watercolor is when they put light colors over dark colors. You can go, oh, that they can never do that in watercolor. But if they don't do that, which some of them don't, they use the same techniques as watercolor, building up darkness from light. You'd never know. That's how good it has gotten. No, I think Alex Ross was a watercolor.
Yeah, I think he was too.
Alex Ross uses a technique from the 50s that I don't know the name of, but I heard someone at Marvel talk about it. There's a specific technique he uses when working in watercolor from photographs that was big in the 50s, but then, faded away. And I don't know enough about 50s illustration to know what the name is.
I can see why people have a problem not noticing, because his colors are very bright and solid, and it's not what you're expecting from watercolors.
He's not using a John J. Muth, Kent Williams watercolor technique. Not at all. Mm-hmm. Not at all. I'm printing some of the comics out there. Other than all, sometimes it's fun just to look at what's coming out. It's like the comics in your head from looking at the previews are better than the actual. I always say that about movies too. Sometimes you see the preview, and the movie in your head is better than watching the actual movie.
And then sometimes in movies, when you watch, like if you get the Blu-ray or whatever, and you see the making of stuff, sometimes that's much better than the actual movie is.
Right. I did the commute to New York City in the 80s. No internet, no smartphones. What are you talking about? Commute is now easy.
Broadsheet newspapers. Broadsheet newspapers. That's how you spend the time.
I had headphones on the same time. Listen to my Walkman tapes. It's just.
And you had to fast forward to skip a song.
Right, and
Kids today don't know.
Joe Maneely's commute in the 50s. Whoa. No headphones.
Just broadsheets.
Newspaper, that was it. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, can I take a look at the sports page?
Yeah. I would say what's weird about commuting, and I made this observation just right before COVID, a couple years ago when I was commuting in to teach, is that I'm surrounded by 1,000 people at any given time, but you can't interact with any of them in any human way unless something goes wrong, and then you can. So it's like when everything's going smoothly, you can't talk to strangers. You're sitting there amongst 1,000 people all by yourself, and it is so weird.
Subway during rush hour, trying to avoid any sort of human physical contact.
Yeah. I read painted comics get the same pay as regular pages, so very hard economic. It depends if you're getting the pay from the penciler, inker, and colorist. That's why I think guys want to do it, because you can get 3 guys' pay. That's if you can do it. And like I know that the technique that the watercolor technique that Kent Williams and all those guys in the 80s used took that into account. They could actually do that technique fairly quickly.
Scott Hampton.
The Alex Ross ones. Yeah, Alex Ross uses gouache and watercolor. Gouache is just a watercolor gouache is one of my favorites. It's a watercolor with white in it, so it's opaque. So you can go back and put opaque stuff over transparent stuff. That's how he's able to get such nice technique.
Yeah, we used gouache in art classes when they were still common core, which is until the 9th grade. I didn't really like art classes. I wasn't any good at drawing.
I
used to do I used to do that 3-point thing to draw a straight line with the ruler, and I don't know how the middle point was never in line with the ruler.
Were you any good at? Oh my God, my mind's drawing a blank now. Were you good at geometry?
No.
That's probably why.
First time, even in elementary school, when I was not good at something in math, it was geometry.
That was my favorite part of math by far, was geometry.
Yeah. Big cities are like that. But I said the difference between like being in Manhattan and being on a commute is when you're actually in Manhattan and you're walking. You're usually walking from place to place. So there's no real opportunity to talk to anyone anyway. Mm-hmm. Or else you're standing on the street, and occasionally standing on a Manhattan street corner, you catch someone's eye. You catch someone's eye, and you acknowledge each other's humanity. Or even rarer occasion, you talk to a stranger. But on a commute, you're just sitting there waiting, not doing a thing, not going from point A to. You have no purpose at that moment except to wait for the train, and you're not allowed to say hello to. You listen to people. People are allowed to talk on their phone. They're talking on the phone left and right. You can listen to them talking on the phone, but it's just such a weird thing.
Now, if you live in a small town in the South, it's completely the opposite. Yeah, everybody will talk to everybody.
Right. In a small town, it's impolite. Yeah. Like I said, I think it's all because, we're not made to interact with 1,000 human beings in half an hour. We can't do it. So we interact with none of them. That's. I understand it. It's just so weird. But then, when there's a problem, when the train doesn't show up because someone died on the tracks, then you start talking to people. That's what's so strange.
Well, but you need the information. You don't. Have, something happened. You don't have the information. You need to get it.
But you talk about more than the information. You start talking about other things too, but then it wears off in about 20 minutes as you're still waiting for something. It's fun. There's a shelf life for that. We're human beings again here interacting.
Something happened that connects everybody.
Think about it.
Right. Mm. But what was that, Scott?
It is a very weird phenomenon if you think about it. Everybody's are in this little personal bubble. Until something happens, then not very long after that bubble comes back.
Right. It is very strange. And speaking of New York City, now New York City is Disneyland with poor sanitation. People have been saying that for a long time.
Except Goofy.
Have any of you guys ever read Box Office Poison by Alex Robinson?
I have read good things about it, but I've never
about
it's always pages. It's part of the list that I always mean to get one day.
Well, I bought this in the 90s, as comics, and read it as it was coming out. And this collected edition came out in 2000. And it's in black and white, too. And just a few years ago, IDW started to colorize it. But I think they only got out 5 issues. Mm-hmm. I didn't even hear of it to put on my pull list till it was gone. So I'm guessing nobody heard of it and nobody bought it. Because this is fairly well, at least you guys have heard of it as an indie comic. It's not that, if this is by Top Shelf, it's not that unknown, but these days it's pretty darn unknown. This is 20 years old now.
I have to say that whoever designed the cover there probably got paid more than they should have.
Yeah. I remember a Box Office Poison collection from 10, 12 years ago. It looked a lot more normal. I can't remember the publisher, but I think that Box Office Poison is a comic that professionals like.
Yeah.
So they want to keep it in print when they're editors.
Well, that's because it is a good comic. And what I found I haven't read it in I don't know how long, 15 years, 10 years, somewhere around that. It has been a long time since I read this. and I always liked it. I was like, oh, I want to go back. Finally, this week, I was like, I'm going to go back and read Box Office Poison, and it's still good. But what really surprised me was the nostalgia, because I'm not a big nostalgia person. But the entire world of Box Office Poison is gone. And I just saw a meme just like before we came on here that said something like, this is just a and it was a picture of a little girl in front of the Twin Towers. And it said, this is just a little reminder the world you were born into doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, this world doesn't exist anymore because it's about Box Office Poison. There's about 6 characters in here who are all in their early 20s, all living in New York City. And 2 of them, well, one of them, the one guy wants to be a cartoonist, and he's kind of going he wants to be a superhero cartoonist route. And then there's another guy who's like the main character. And it's funny, it changed main characters halfway through too. The main character in the beginning was this guy who wants to be a writer, and he works in a bookstore, like a big bookstore like the Strand or something. So there's the writer guy, his buddy who's the cartoonist, and they went to college together, and they're fresh out of college. And the writer guy moves in with these 2 people. The woman is a cartoonist, but she's like a Raina Telgemeier type cartoonist, only nowhere near that successful. She's looking for a publisher who's an actual book publisher who publishes cartoons. And once again, she's not that successful either. And she's got a boyfriend who lives in with them. And then this the writer guy gets a girlfriend too. But what was so nostalgic about it was just living that life, and because it was similar to a life I lived in the 90s too in New York City. But no cell phones. Trying to be a cartoonist, an artist, and the only way to do it was to send stuff out to publishers. The one guy is now assisting this old guy, an old cartoonist from the Golden Age. I mean, like nowadays, this whole book would be written completely differently. There'd be the internet, there'd be cell phones, there'd be Indiegogo, there'd be Patreon. There's like so many more avenues to be, even if you're ultimately unsuccessful at it. There's just so many more avenues to be a cartoonist these days.
To me, it's interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that it just, the nostalgia of it all was like, wow.
Yeah. It's kind of a catch-22 because the internet brought about so many different opportunities to do different things. But what it also brought with it was audience fragmentation.
Yeah. There's a lot of that too. Tell us what trade. Well, we'll have to see what trades you got. Yeah. Having lived in the same city, I feel like a good portion of the city gets erased and written over every 25 years. But this is more than the city getting erased. This is like the whole sort of lifestyle. Because New York City is always changing over in terms of geography and people living there. I've been hearing that the whole time I've been in and around New York City. But this is different. This is our whole lifestyle has changed since the 90s. I mean, it's just, and there's no going back. And it's just even one of the themes in this is that the old guy who the young cartoonist is assisting for created a superhero in the Golden Age and who is now in movies. And he didn't get any money for it. The same. But even superhero movies in 1994 are a completely different beast than superhero movies in 2021. It's not. How do you even compare them? It's like getting ripped off by a superhero movie now is like the top of the rip-off scale, because superhero and like the scale is so different because everybody knows superhero movies now. In 1994, The movie came from a comic book. Hardly anyone ever knew about it. People didn't even
No.
know Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a comic book.
Yeah. Or you hired Shaquille O'Neal to play Steel, and then you got that.
Right.
Why did you have to dig that up?
It's just amazing to me the nostalgia for this time. Like, I'm not a big nostalgia person,
Yeah.
but the nostalgia for this time was really.
I know what you mean, because in Europe we don't pave over cities, or you don't bring down the buildings. They stay. The buildings are the same,
right.
but the facades aren't colored the same. They're not decorated the same. The stores aren't the same, and the people going by the street, they don't do the same things.
Yeah, in New York they knock things down, and lifestyle is part of what I mean. But to your point, creative lifestyles have gone through a titanic shift. Yeah, it's kind of nutty.
And
Like my friend was even I was talking Wednesday night to I have a Wednesday night drawing club, and I was talking to my friend who happened to be walking by where Marvel used to be in the 90s, 387 Park Avenue South. So he was showing it to us. Buildings there, but the facade is completely different. There's like no nostalgia, just because they redid the whole building lobby. It looks nothing like it did in the 90s. So it's just kind of like, it's nice, but that's not the building I remember.
Bellow brings up a good point. In Europe, I think there's more of an effort to preserve historic buildings than there is here in the States.
They wouldn't have knocked down old Penn Station.
We have a phenomenon in that there's a lot of flight from the inner cities to suburb towns now, and because people can't afford the high prices of living in the center. And that means that historical zones are now very expensive to maintain and to do the upkeep, because many of those buildings are over 200 years old. They're not built the same. You have to do things in there that they weren't designed for, like indoor plumbing, electricity wiring, and make sure that they're livable. Some owners just give up. And then you have they get closed up, and they start to come down on their own. Yeah, deteriorate completely,
crumble.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't save them, but they do try to make sure that the original architecture is maintained. Sometimes the government has to expropriate the buildings, and in order to keep to have them restored. But then the only people who are interested in buying are foreign market developers who want to build another hotel.
Yeah, they wouldn't have knocked down the old Penn Station in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard that story? Oof.
Yeah.
Because going through, they knocked it down in the early 60s. And the only reason Grand Central Station is still around is Jackie Onassis Kennedy had to save it. She had to lead an effort to save it as a historical building. And Grand Central Station is a beautiful place. But it's like, when I talked about commuting before, it's like the new Penn Station, which they just redid part of it. The new Penn Station, I swear it wasn't designed for humans. It's like you get out of the train, 1,000 people get out of the train and have to go to an escalator one person wide. It's like, who
designed that?
Who designed this? And then when you're going to catch a train, there's this sort of big atrium there that's not really that big. It's not as big as Grand Central, where there's 5,000 people standing in it, waiting to see which track, with a whole bunch of 25 entrances to trains all around us, waiting to see which one you're going to go to. And then as soon as it's announced, 500 people race to that entrance where there's these two big, huge doors that open up onto an escalator 1 or 2 people wide. And you're just I'm going
to see if I can share a picture here.
Okay.
Select window screen.
Down the bottom is share. There we go.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a very big picture, but this is a train station. Oops.
I
This
think
is
I
a
have
train
to add to the screen. There we go.
Yeah, this is in the Lisbon historical zone. The train station has been there since 1890.
Wow.
Inside it's all modernized, of course, but they keep the outside as it was. There are even all the decorations inside have been kept, except for one statue, which the statue wasn't fixed. So an idiot tourist climbed on it and accidentally pushed it to the floor, and it broke, and it was a 100 plus year old statue.
Wow. Yeah. Grand Central Station is beautiful. It's big, it's roomy, it's made for moving a lot of people.
There's a very famous photograph of it, too, that most people have probably seen.
Yeah. Birthright 1 to 5, that's a good one. Sixth Gun, 7 hardcover of Lantern City, box office poison. Yeah, I haven't read The Sixth Gun. Who is it? Who was it? Oh God! All of a sudden, his name flipped out of my head because he hasn't been around in a while. Who used to run the show Saturday night with the Sleepy Reader was on a bit. How come I can't remember his name? Tall guy too. Oh, he works too much now, so he's not on the show anymore. You can't save the past forever. Yep. New York City Commuter Nightmares. Good title for a comic book.
I was surprised when they tore down Yankee Stadium.
Oddfellow. There we go. Oddfellow Thoughts. That's who I'm thinking of. He was a big fan of Sixth Gun. Good stuff.
You can save the past forever, but they sure try. The only time I've been to Athens, the Parthenon was covered in scaffolding. They were doing restoration work.
Yeah, they're doing a massive restoration project on the Colosseum too.
And the Colosseum is hard because the Colosseum was always in the center of Rome. It was always being surrounded by the Roman equivalent of apartment buildings.
Yeah.
So there are parts of the walls that are covered in more recent stuff.
And let's see, the next comic I got is vinyl. Nice. I like the cover on this one. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's just weird, man. It's just issue 3. Who does this? Doug Wagner is the writer. Daniel Hilliard is the artist. Dave Stewart on colors. And Ed Dukeshire is the letterer. But this has turned into the cult versus the serial killers. And they all seem to have superpowers of some kind.
Of course.
Yeah, wouldn't they?
It's just weird. Yep, Travis Oddfellows. That was the name I couldn't remember for some reason. Maybe because he hasn't done a video in a while. But the first issue of this did not capture how weird it is. Because it has just gotten weirder and weirder, which is okay. Like I said, it's a fight, turns into a fight between this woman who runs a cult and this guy who's a serial killer in his serial killer club. It must be.
Is it like a Razorhead level of weird?
I don't know. I barely remember Eraserhead, but I once had
Strange.
I had Fantagraphics publish something, a short story of mine in one of their anthologies in the very early 90s. So it was the first thing I ever had published. And Gary Groth told me it was the weirdest thing he'd ever seen. So it must be weird.
You should have got
Graphic Story Monthly. I think that was the name of the book. I was in the same book with Jacques Tardy, though. I think it was the first time I saw Jacques Tardy.
Did the book come out on time?
I don't know. It was reprint stuff from Tardy, so he wasn't going to miss any deadlines.
So it wasn't Tardy after all.
Oh, and I got a Marvel story for you that I pulled out. I've been working on. I want to start a Patreon. And so I've been working on a digital magazine of my work. So I was working on a logo today, and just today, just before we came on, I was going like, need a Jared Bibliot. It's not really that big. But I was working on a logo today, and I was just thinking to myself, man, I really don't like working on logos that much. I mean, I've done tons and tons of them for myself, at least.
Right.
But working on the methodology of it is just kind of, you have to look through fonts, you have to find a font you like, you have to do it, you have to manipulate. It's just kind of like, maybe it's just not creative enough for me.
Or you can spend 5 figures and hire Todd Klein to do it.
Right. But it just reminded me, I actually did 2 logos for Marvel. And I did them because usually Marvel and lots of people do things that I'm just not down with in terms of like logos. They don't just hire, and this was standard practice. You don't just hire someone to do a logo. You put it out that we want a logo. And you tell 3 or 4 letterers that. And then they all pitch ideas for the logo. And you pick the one you want.
Right.
I just never wanted to work for free. The whole idea of me coming up with stuff and doing the job without having the job is never sat well.
Work, basically.
Yeah. But that's the way it was done. Except for one time, I'll show you the annuals. These are the 2 logos I did. Machine Man and Bastion. Let me.
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
And I just happened to be sitting around the bullpen one, doing my usual job, being bored out of my mind. And the editor, I can't remember which editor it was. It says Mark Powers is the editor on this one. Maybe it was him. It was like I was probably pasting up the cover, and he's like, "We don't have logos for Machine Man and Bastion, and they won't let me pay anyone to make logos because it's just for an annual." He's like, "Do you think you can just make a couple of logos?" And I was sitting there bored out of my mind. I'm like, I can knock out a couple of logos in a couple of hours, sure. But then Michael Golden, who was art director at the time, was like, What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm just knocking out a couple of. He's like, "They're not paying you for that?" I'm like, "No." He said, he's like, "That's wrong. They can't have you make logos and not pay you for it." So he actually said, "Make the logos. They're going to pay you for them." And Michael Golden actually went and signed off on the vouchers and got me paid for the. He's like, "No, they can't do that. That's taking advantage of you. That's not allowed."
No.
Especially for Michael Golden also. He came from the. He'd been working in the ad world for a good decade, 15 years at that point. I don't even know how long. That's where he made a lot of his money.
Right.
And as he said, Marvel paid like $500 for a logo. He's like, I get more than that for a logo sketch. Because in the ad world, they pay you for your logo sketches, and then they pick one. So, so those are the two logos. And it also appeared on the Cable annual. Good for Michael Golden. Machine Man appeared on this one too. I don't know if he's ever appeared anywhere else.
The logo, I don't think so. Machine Man hasn't had a solo title in quite a while. You remember every other attempt to bring back Machine Man? There was that M-Tech line, and the title was called X51. I think they thought that it would sell better if it had an X in it. It was a spin-off of the Cable run as well.
Didn't Barry Windsor Smith do some Machine Man work?
In the 80s. But since the 90s, there was X51.
Wow.
Then he appeared in Next Wave, that thing by Warren Ellis and Stuart Immonen. And then there was like one of those companion books to Mark Miller's Trouble. It was called Teen Machine or something. And they tried to reinvent the Machine Man as a teenager going to school or whatever.
Oh boy!
Wow,
there's a lot of cover copy on this.
62 Blues brings up a good point. If you go to Tomorrow's website, you can pick up that Michael Golden DVD pretty cheap, and they have a lot of other good stuff there too.
And that just reminds me too. One of the writers on this is Carl Bowlers, who I'm working with now at Bad Idea. He's the main editor I work with there. So there's another name. Machine. And it's funny, I think I have seen a Machine Man, maybe, I don't know, in the last 10 years, I think another Machine Man logo. I think I saw one like long past this that wasn't the one I made. I'm like, oh, like got a new Machine Man logo. I wonder if this one exists anymore, because it was on their server. Marvel had a server, of course, where they have all their logos and stuff on in the digital age, but who knows? I don't know who's been keeping that and if it exists now.
Speaking of Marvel logos, when they relaunched the Conan title, that logo was terrible. You could tell it was done in an old Mac.
Yeah.
You just look at it, it has that look to it, like, wow, it's not good.
The old Mac just reminded me of though he didn't acknowledge it, I was saying something to Eric Larson on Twitter just the other day. Just a technical thing he got wrong. When they were talking about one of the things that's aged the worst in comics is coloring from the 90s. And he had some explanation where they had to do a lot of gradations because the edges were all stair steps. And I'm like, no. There was anti-aliasing then in the 90s. Matter of fact, you can't do gradations without anti-aliasing. That's what a gradation is. But
a friend of mine posts a lot of scanned comics up on Facebook. Yeah. And a lot of them are from the 50s and 60s. And it's not just the technology, but some of the choices that the colorists made back then make me wonder if they were all drunk.
They might not have been colorists at all. I don't know when
that's the separator.
Yeah, that's the separator. Just because I didn't know that until I read that a book on EC Comics that I've got.
Right.
That it was when Marie Severin got to EC. They just sent the black and white artwork to the printer. And the color separator put whatever colors they wanted in there.
I'm beginning to wonder.
Severin started doing color guides to send them along to the the separator. I don't know if that was done I don't know if she was just the first one to do that at EC.
Yes, because there's just so many of these older comics where a person is all one color. Clothing, everything is just blue, for example. It's like,
Yeah.
why? And there's no consistency from panel to panel, which drives me crazy.
Yes. So I don't know when color guides became standard. Obviously, by the early 60s, they were, because we start to hear about, Stan Goldberg and other people coloring early Marvel stuff. So there was color, but I don't, Marie Severin got to EC Comics in, like, I don't know, the early 50s sometime. But I can't imagine that DC just sent off Superman willy-nilly to the separators with no color guide. But did they? I don't know. I've never seen that written anywhere. Yeah. The choices were all made by what we're printing on. Yeah, newsprint looks totally different. Oh yeah.
I mean, when you see
they're only allowed a certain amount of colors too.
When you see a comic that's done as a gothic horror book and a castle is bright orange, it's very jarring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you begin to wonder, like, did they submit this to, like, the Florida Board of Tourism for coloring?
She definitely invented EC Comics coloring. I don't know what went on in the rest of the industry. Suits coming on the rainbow colors back then. It's all those strange. It's better than having.
Yeah, people like wearing bright green suits. It's like, unless you're the Joker,
The ice cream man. Now I'm having nostalgia for 1998 Marvel as I look over at this. We were computerized for a good few years by then. So coloring was different. And to address Eric Larson's point as to why, coloring in the 90s, especially Marvel coloring in the 90s, hasn't aged well. It was nothing technical. That was all editorial. That's what they liked. And we all knew it was terrible. We all knew that all these gradations with 1 million highlights on everything looked terrible. But that's what the editors liked, and that's what they hired. And the colorists knew it. The colorists knew, if I put 1,000 highlights on this one figure, the editor will think it's cool. There was a while there were lens flares on everything, because the editors thought it was cool. They thought these new Photoshop, it had nothing to do, it had less to do with the colorists and more to do with editorial choices.
So maybe if J.J. Abrams hadn't read comics in the 90s, we wouldn't have that.
Because freelancers aren't dumb. If they see the guys who are getting hired are the ones who are doing these garish gradients on everything, you do garish gradients on everything. Let's see, does this one have any Yeah, look at what I mean by that. There's something in photography called a pin light, which is when you have a highlight on if you're photographing something and you want to highlight on a certain area, you have to get a pin light, a separate little light that beams a light right onto that one little area. That's how lighting works. It doesn't. There's not highlights on everything. But if you look at Marvel's 90 coloring, there's little white areas everywhere. There's like 3 pin lights on Machine Man, 2 on his chest. Oh, there's a pin light on each of his abs, 1 on his bicep, 1 on his helmet. Cable has pin lights. There's 2 pin lights on his thigh. There's pin lights on his chest. His forearm has 3, 4, 5 pin lights on it. It's like
there's so much light that everybody went away. Did we lose? Gosh, did we lose both? There we are. Okay.
Whoop, hold on. There we go. I'm on Ethernet tonight too. I specifically switched over to Ethernet rather than wireless to see how it works, and so far it's been good.
Yeah.
But you can see 1 million. That's what editorial wanted: 1 million pin lights. And
I have to admit that at the time I thought it was cool.
Yeah,
It's almost like that.
lots of people did, but we all knew it was kind of, that's not how light works.
It reminds me of that effect that you have on Boris Vallejo paintings, where all his figures look like oiled bodybuilders. It's kind of like an equivalent of that.
Yeah, but with even bolder highlights.
Right.
So who wants to do a rip, read, and tear? I made a few of those for tonight. Let's see. Let me share my screen. Let's see. And our theme for tonight is mostly 1983 DC.
Okay.
That's kind of what caught my eye. Where is YouTube, StreamYard, Mazzucchelli? Do I not have it open? Hold on. Let me hit cancel that for a second and go see if I opened this. There it is. All right, 1983 DC. We're going to start with some first issues. Do I have too many windows open? I can't even find my window.
I'm bad for having 30 plus tabs open at a time.
I try to keep it under 6.
I can't do it.
I gotta hide some of these windows. I got too much stuff open. It can't even deal with these many windows. It's like, no. Yeah, I don't need Creative Cloud open. Let's try this again. See if you can find the window. Come on, find the right window. Still no. Still got too many windows open. All right. Oh, that's why. I've got 3 windows open here too. In Chrome. That one we need open. That one we need open.
Yeah,
Let's
2
try
windows
this
open,
one.
and the browser has 2 tabs only.
Ha. Share screen. It won't see Photoshop for some reason. I wonder if I could just share my entire screen and then move over. Let's try that. And then highlight, then go into Photoshop. Come on. Oh, now that's right over.
It's so jarring for me now because I use everything in dark mode.
Ah.
When I see everything in white, it's like, whoa. Yeah.
Now, am I showing the 3 covers? Because now I can't actually see the
black screen.
You're still showing StreamYard.
Ha!
But not.
It will not see. Wonder why that is. I shared them last week. It somehow will not see Photoshop. Oh well, I'll save this for next week.
Can you just save the images and then pull them up in Chrome?
I could probably do that.
Why are you using Chrome? People have got to stop using Chrome. It's the worst browser in the history of browsers. It's even worse than Internet Explorer 3.0.
I wouldn't go that far.
They're all pretty bad, unfortunately.
I use Brave and I like it.
I need to start using Brave. Firefox has this tendency to get bloated.
Yeah. Firefox is a resource hog.
Firefox and Opera bloated everything on me.
Yeah, but Firefox does everything. It's just that because it can do everything, it does everything at the same time.
Huh. Let's go with 2. File, export. Bum bum. All right, let's see if this works. Now I need to open that. in Chrome. All right, let's see if it'll share a Chrome window. Share screen. Window. Let's go to Chrome tab. Oh man, how many tabs do I have open? There we go. Let's share that.
There you go.
There we go. There's our first one.
I have Firestorm.
This is 1983 DC comic number ones. Tales of the New Teen Titans, Cyborg, Arion number 1, and Firestorm number 1. Which one are you going to read? Which one are you going to rip? And which one are you going to slab?
Well, I've already read Firestorm number 1 because I actually have a copy of it.
I read all 3. I don't remember any of them.
I remember the Tales of the Teen Titans quite well. It's one of my favorite Titans origin stories.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that issue of the Teen Titans? Everybody had multiple copies of it. Everybody, it was like one of the Teen Titans was like it was the second hottest book at the time after the X-Men. And like everybody everywhere bought multiple copies of that whole series. They were like origin stories for 4 characters, and they never became worth anything. Slab Cyborg, read Firestorm, rip Arion.
I'm going to read Cyborg, slab Arion, and rip Firestorm. Because this is not the first appearance of Firestorm, but this is the first appearance of Arion. And maybe one day there will be a CW show and I can sell it for $20.
I have a weird outlook on these 3.
Yeah? What do you got?
Just by default, I'm going to read Arion because I haven't read it.
Mm-hmm.
And then by default, I'm going to slab Firestorm because I know what it is. And I'm going to rip out Cyborg because I could care less about anything to do with the Titans.
So yeah, I think we have 3 different ones here because I'm going to slab Cyborg because I like the George Perez artwork. I'll hang that one up. I'm going to read Arion, even though it's boring, and I'm going to rip Firestorm because that's not boring, but it's disappointing, I remember. Yeah, wonderful cup. And 3 pretty similar. I mean, DC must have been going for something in 1983 where they're 3 similar. It's both yeah, that used to be one out of the first Nightwing because nobody cared about Nightwing for the longest time. Slab and read Firestorm. You slab one of them, you rip one of them, and you read one of them. That's the game. It's like kiss, marry, kill.
I don't remember who drew Arion at the time.
I don't know.
Jan Gersima.
Oh, okay. Because Firestorm was being done by Al Milgrom, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Who Milgrom, to me, the only work of his that I didn't really find disappointing was his Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
From the 70s. That stuff is really good.
I haven't read those. Everything
else, I'm like, eh. But those covers just reminded me, have you guys seen... You have to rip a comic if you're playing this game. Besides,
we're not really ripping comics. We're just playing a game. Okay, no comics are hardly the production of this show.
Yeah, when you play F, marry, kill, you don't actually kill anyone either. You don't marry them or F them either. So it's all a hypothetical. Actually, let's play. Let me get one more ready, just because I made one especially for Scott.
Oh God!
Let's see. Name that one 01.
I've got a feeling I know what at least one of them's going to be. I could be wrong.
Yeah, you want to guess?
Begins with an R and ends with a D. Two
I don't
words.
know.
Okay.
What was that?
Said 2 words.
You can say the words. You're allowed to guess out loud.
Okay. Is one of these a Rob Liefeld cover?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, Liefeld wasn't doing comics in '83 yet.
Thank
It's
God.
probably 12 or something. Is it Plop?
Nope.
I like Plop. Matter of fact, there should be a Plop compilation.
There should be a Plop compilation. I agree.
Let's see. Share screen, Chrome tab. There we go. It's the Mike Kaluta covers.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Oh, that's easy for me.
Conan, Wonder Woman, and House of... You're going to rip up a Mike Kaluta cover? Easy? Let's see. Which one are you going to take?
No, but I know which one I like the least.
Oh, okay.
I know which one I like the best. Okay. And I actually have copies. I don't know if I have the Wonder Woman or not, but I have the other 2. I would read Conan the King, which is my favorite of those 3 covers. I would slab House of Mystery, and I would rip up Wonder
Oh.
Woman.
Ripping up Wonder Woman.
It's not a bad cover. It's just my least favorite of those 3.
I would.
Okay. There was another one I almost picked, a House of Mystery with Eye Vampire. It was a big face shot with a single tear running down. I was like, I can't have 2 big face shots.
Well, if you know, I don't know if you've noticed.
What do you
this
got for us,
or not.
Paolo?
Yeah. If you notice the figure leaning up against the tree in House of Mystery, his tunic he has on is almost with the exception of the sleeve length, is almost the exact same tunic that Conan is wearing. And look at the hairstyles.
He looks like a Prince Valiant.
You know where that comes from, right? That tunic and those hairstyles come directly from Prince Valiant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Paolo? Yeah. What do you got on this one?
I would read Conan, although that's probably not the best. I think it's Jim Owsley writing right now at that stage. Yeah. I would slab Wonder Woman and I would rip House of Mystery. I never had any interest in House of Mystery, and I think I could maybe sell that Wonder Woman Mike Kaluta cover.
That House of Mystery is Eye Vampire, though. That's some of my. I still have some of those. Yeah, I always kind of liked that story.
About a 10.
So I'd slab Wonder Woman, read House of Mystery, and rip up Conan. Even though I like Conan.
Rip up Conan, man. That cover is just nice.
Isn't it Jeff Isherwood art inside?
I don't know who.
I don't know.
There may be. I'm not really sure. I can look it up and find out, but I'm too lazy right now. So.
After Wright Thomas quit, it was Jim Owsley writing and Jeff Isherwood drawing, I think.
But did you guys this week see the Marvel premiere of fungible, what is it? NFP, non-fungible token comics?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, the next time I hear the letters NFP in this order, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm tired of hearing that.
Well, we won't mention them again, but Starstruck. There we go. That's Kaluta. But if for the people who don't know, there's an app called VV, VEVE. And I tried to download it and sign up for it just because I wanted to see what it's like. You're better off going to the website because it's one of those apps that, you give them your email address to verify that it's you signing up. And then they send an email to your email address and you click on the link to verify it's you.
Right.
Errored out every time. I couldn't even get the app to work.
Did you have a VPN up at the time?
No.
Okay.
But I was just like, okay. But it amazed me that, and Rob Liefeld, they had they premiered, I think, the first day 3 comic books that were non-fungible tokens, which meant you could own them. I don't know if people out there know what that is, but it's some new technology they came up with where it's a digital comic book, but you can own it and it keeps track of ownership of the digital comic. So you can buy the digital, unlike like if you get a digital comic book from Comixology, you don't own it. You can access it all you want. If you bootleg a digital comic, you don't technically own it. But with non-fungible tokens, you can own that version of the comic. But anyway, Rob Liefeld said it sold out in 30 seconds. And I don't know what you'd call them, print runs on these were 60,000 copies at $7 a pop. And there were 5 here. Let me see if I can. Do I have it up?
What was this? I'm just curious.
Let me show you. It was New Mutants 98 was one of them. Marvel Comics number 1 and Marvel's number 1. Hold on a second. Where is?
Don't get me started.
Don't get angry. Relax over there.
No, I'm just the idea.
There we go. It's Marvel Digital Comics, and it's New Mutants 98. Here we go. Drop date $6.99, and there's 5 variants too. Classic cover. Most of 48,000 are that. 600 are the True Believer variant. So they're House of X number 1. Marvel's number 1, and there was a Marvel Comics number 1. And here's the interesting thing: secondary market fees. As with all Marvel digital comics, a 6% licensor fee will be applied to Marvel sales in the secondary market, in addition to the existing VV 2.5%. So they get a piece of it. So you can buy this digital comic for $7. You can sell it to somebody else, and 8.5% of that goes to Marvel and VV. Some old rope. Get your old rope here. But
something?
I was trying to figure out.
I would rather get a canary and line the inside of the cage with $100 bills.
You only need a $7 bill. But there's also, there's rarities to this, and they're blind box. So I was trying to figure out, how many customers do you think there were for this? Because 60,000 of them was the print run. They all sold out. But I have to say to myself, when there's 6 rarities and you're selling them blind box, that means you're looking for repeat customers. Because that's what people do with blind boxes. And how many copies do you think each person bought? Because I definitely don't think there was 60,000 people buying this.
No.
Well, let's just say you were interested in this. You were a collector. You were interested in this. How much money would you spend on it? $20, $30? I mean,
200.
You could do that, right? That for your average customer who's actually interested in doing this and wants to try to get one of the rares, I could see them spending.
I'd say 200.
That much? I would think you'd be an investor then.
Yeah.
I would
Everyone
say
is.
Yeah. If you were, because when you think about it, let's say 100 copies, that's $700. That's not out of the realm of possibility of most collectors. That's for sure. You'd say, you could talk yourself into buying 100 copies of it, and since you can sell them, you can hopefully get one of the expensive rares and flip the rest. Sell them for, I don't know how much they sell for, but I would imagine that there's no more than 10,000 customers. Would you think about that?
I wonder how many of those are retailers too.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. But I was gonna bet 2,000 to 5,000 people are spending
even
money on
less.
this.
Yeah. Yeah, even it could be, like I said, because it's when you're a guy looking to flip them, it's not that much, and they're easier to flip than comics, I would think. I mean, I don't know how much demand there is for them right now, but you don't have to go on eBay.
The thing is, this type of speculators, they're selling to other speculators.
Yeah.
And they admit it, and they don't find anything wrong with this in terms of pretending in thinking that the market is healthy because of it.
You know what I was thinking too? This thought came to my head. What these actually are the financial instrument derivatives in comics. Because a derivative is like an invention of the financial industry. It's them figuring out what they can convince someone is worthwhile. Like a derivative derives its value from something. Like the thing that nearly collapsed the economy was mortgage derivatives, where you couldn't invest in buying mortgages from the bank. So what the bank did was it packaged 100 mortgages together and divided it up into 5,000 parts. And that's what a derivative is. You could buy one of those 5,000 parts, but its value is derived from the mortgages in the bank. The value of these non-fungible tokens is derived from physical copies of New Mutants 98 or whatever. So it's like, if all of a sudden the value of New Mutants 98 plummets, the value of these digital versions of it are going to plummet too. So I thought it's really and when you think about it, I got my thing. A lot of like current comic speculation is really derivatives too, because it's based on movies and TV shows. Like Hulk 181 wouldn't be a derivative, because Hulk 181 is valuable because Wolverine's popular. Wolverine became popular in comic books, driving up the value of Hulk 181.
Right.
But like when a new TV show or movies, like Thanos was completely a derivative. Because as like, ETA Nick and others say, beware investing in villain books if their villains are appearing in, because often the villains don't hold their values in comic book wise. I think that's because the villains are really more derivatives than the heroes, because I can't think of any supervillain whose first appearance became really valuable, unless it's somebody like Doctor Doom. But Fantastic Four number 4 was going to be valuable anyway.
That's the obvious one, maybe Doctor Doom.
That's the obvious one, and that was valuable long before the movies. So that's not really a derivative. But like Thanos, like I don't think there are any villain. I have seen villains' origins go up in price because of movies,
right?
But I think they're all derivatives.
Well, one thing I was thinking, New Mutants is an exception, but with the Marvels book, you could probably find a paper copy of that now for less than what they're asking.
Yeah. I think that one, though, the comic book itself isn't worth much. It's popular. So I think that's the only
thing. It's popular now as it was a few years ago. I don't know. I don't keep up.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think I think Marvel's has been an evergreen for Marvel, at least. But most people who want to read that go for the trade paperback or maybe digital. It's not like New Mutants 98. Well, what it is too is That isn't it. That is a comic kind that that's one story that's popular, as opposed to a first appearance. First appearances, I think, a genuine first appearance that's not a derivative doesn't go down in value. But something like Marvel's that's a story that's popular because of the story and the art, there's no value to because it's constantly in print.
Well, here's another thing I was thinking too. Say like if you had a scan of Marvels, and of course you've got that file on your hard drive. What's the difference between that and a non-fungible token?
You don't own the scan. That's the only difference. They have convinced you that you own the non-fungible token, and that ownership has value. That's
the stock market. It's an artificially.
It's not even the stock market. It's derivatives of the stock market.
What I'm getting at is if you have a scan, which a digital copy, of Marvel's #1, your NFT, I mean, physically is going to be pretty much the same thing.
Yes, the content does not matter. It's all about convincing you that it's traders and collectors need something to trade and collect. Now, this is giving them something to trade and Authors need to get into the digital signature. That's something interesting I saw too, is that people who bought the Deadpool 98 were having Rob Liefeld sign it by retweeting. So it was that they would link to their Deadpool 98 and said, "Rob, could you retweet this as a signature?" Okay. That just baffled me.
This is all Minecraft, is what it is.
Exactly. Laugh out loud. I was like, what?
It's like these things exist in the digital world, but that's the only place where they actually exist.
Right. They don't. But they've convinced people that there's value to the ownership. But when you think about it, $7 isn't much to invest if you think it's going to go up. I mean, if it was a comic I liked, I would spend $7 on a lark to buy one and own it. I could see myself doing that because it's only $7. And I could see someone with, who's a flipper, who's more savvy about that stuff, to me saying, "I'll buy 100 of them." $700, big deal.
So once you own it, I would assume that you have the file is on your hard drive, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's not on your hard drive. It's in
cloud.
It's in the blockchain.
So it's cloud storage, basically.
Yes, but it's like the blockchain is what keeps track of everything.
So what happens if the server goes down one day?
It's not on one server. It's on a ton of servers. That's how it works. There's something called blockchain that's supposedly unbreakable, that talks to all the servers, and it constantly makes sure that everything's the same. And if it's not,
I'm aware. Yeah, everything is unbreakable until it's not.
Yeah, one good EMP in the digital media. Well, they have to get the whole world.
Well, you'd have to have a worldwide EMP.
Vivi also said that because there's been a lot of criticism of NFPs because of how much energy it needs to keep all those computers.
Yeah, they're not economically or environmentally friendly, right?
Vivi says it's going to buy carbon credits to be environmentally neutral.
It's the same thing. You're convincing us something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's part of their sales pitch. But I found that fascinating. I wish
Matrix now.
I wish I could have signed on just to see what the marketplace was. I'd like to see what those New Mutants 98s are going for now. that all of them were sold. Because I have to imagine, like I said, if you were a guy, if you put like because I always there's a Magic the Gathering channel that I watch. Well, I forget Rudy. Oh, all of a sudden I forget the name of his channel. Alpha Investments. That's the name of it. It's a big Magic the Gathering channel. He talks about, and he's a guy who buys unopened boxes of Magic the Gathering. That's what he invests in because they increase in price.
Yeah.
And he's always talking about people who, the way sort of your average guy who wants to invest in Magic the Gathering does it, is he puts $10,000 worth of Magic on his credit card and then pays off the interest for a year and then sells all the stuff, hopefully at a big profit that covers everything. Unless, of course, you lose out in the price. But for years, the price was mostly going up. But that's a sector of flippers who put stuff on credit, which I didn't know existed. But I can imagine somebody saying $700, or even Fallow said $1,400 on my credit card. I could probably sell the rest of them. I could buy 200, maybe get some rare ones, sell the rest of them, and pay my credit card before the cycle's even over. I can pay them by the end of the month. Because, like I said, I wish I could see the VV app, but I can't because it kept erroring out, to see the marketplace. Because imagine how easy it must be to sell these things. You just go to the marketplace, say, I have these for these price. Someone buys one. It's all credit card. The money's swapped. Nobody mails anybody anything. There's no feedback. There's no, you didn't send me this. There's no, this isn't in mint condition. There's no, this got damaged in the mail.
Yeah, it reminds me of Minecraft.
Yeah. Video games where you can buy special weapons and armor and stuff like that. Like I found it fascinating just on a weird, observational level. Because, like I said, I have no interest in investing in them, but just on a comic book collecting sociological level. Whew.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to a real comic. Ice Cream Man 25 came out. Special extra big issue, which was all about the fear of flying. Because the whole issue was a plane as it was crashing and what everyone's going through.
The ground?
So, which Ice Cream Mans are all kind of done in ones with an occasional look at his background. But it's a good horror book. But they also had, since it's an extra big issue, a little backup story at the end. Bonus story, paralogue. So I guess that there's a paranormal prologue. And it's all about, and it's this whole story about all these mystical creatures gathering, and they're all walking to go to this where's this? What did it say it was? To this court, and at the end there's a reveal. They're all going to the trial of the Ice Cream Man. And it just says something like, to be continued or not. So they're just giving you, a story in the future where the Ice Cream Man is brought to trial for his crimes in this supernatural environment. But it was just a throwaway story.
Right.
They were just like, this could happen or not. We just wanted to give you the story of it, So I found that an interesting little story. But the main story, if you have a fear of flying, matter of fact, I saw someone on YouTube saying they have a fear of flying, and this issue really affected them. I can understand that. Have you guys ever read Ice Cream Man?
Never have.
The first
check
issue.
it. You can. What was that?
The first issue is the first trade.
Okay. Have you read it?
I read it. I don't own it, but I've read it.
Did you like it?
Well, it seems kind of unfocused. I hear it actually gets more focused as the time goes by.
They're all. It doesn't. They're all done in one. It's not a focused. It's not. There's no big overarching story really. It's really an anthology more than anything else. It's you kind of have to realize that. Otherwise, because it's one of those things where if you're reading it like it's the first story arc in a series of trades, it's not that. Turns out it's not that. And the first trade, they gave you the idea that it was. And then the second, because they introduced some of the characters in the background, but it's like the Ice Cream Man wasn't even in that story, except they insinuated that it was him who crashed the plane. But otherwise, he wasn't in the story at all. And that's how a bunch of these have been. Sometimes he's the host of the story. Sometimes he's in the background. But it's really
a framing element for everything else.
Yeah, yeah. So if you read it with that in mind, I liked it better once I stopped looking for it to focus into an overarching story. That's because it's not. Sort of like what he just did. What was that?
I was going to say, Paolo, if you want to buy it, there's probably an NFT of it coming soon.
You should invest some money in it.
Gonna buy 200 copies.
And another one I got is King Spawn, another giant-sized Spawn. Because like I said, there's going to be 4 Spawn books now. And this was pretty good.
Big salmon.
This was pretty good because it was not written by Todd McFarlane. This was written by Sean Lewis with additional dialogue by Todd McFarlane. Javier Fernandez wrote this one. And there's 4 backup stories that Todd McFarlane wrote, and they really weren't very good. They were more like introduction stories. But Steven Segovia, Marcio Takara, Philip Tan, and Brett Booth drew the backup ones. They were like, you know how sometimes you get a backup story and it's just an introduction to the bigger story, which starts in some other issue?
Yep.
That's what all these backup stories were. So they're kind of disappointing. But the lead story was solid. Yeah, short stories in general, that's what, I have to agree with that. People aren't looking for 6 individual tales in their trade paperback.
Yeah, if you found about short stories in comics versus just mainstream fiction, I'm wondering how much of that emanates now from readers coming up and expecting everything's going to be serialized and there's going to be trades and whatnot, versus one and done stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people expect one and done.
Because some of the best writing in the English language is short stories.
Well, I think it's also, when you think about mainstream superhero stuff, it's all about runs. What's your favorite run? Who's your? It's all about the character existing.
Yeah, but it's runs. It's not collections of storylines.
Yeah. It's all about, because I always see that question, what's your favorite run of a comic book or something? And I don't, as an indie guy, you don't have runs. You have the same guys working on the book for the same amount of issues.
It's like Usagi Ojimbo, it's the whole run, it's just the whole series.
Yeah, exactly. There's no runs. Anything Terry Moore does, there's no runs.
The best issue in John Byrne's Fantastic Four is the one where Aunt Petunia appears for the first time, Wendy's friends. They go to somewhere in the middle of New Mexico when there's some kind of alien-like creature that lives whose species lives in an old burial ground, and it's more of a horror story. It's not what you expect from a Fantastic Four comic, but it's probably the best of the entire run.
Yeah,
But see, if it was done now, they would have done a 6-issue work with it.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't have been as good.
Right.
that's just how superhero comics work these days.
Byrne has about a fifth of his run. There are no actual menaces for the Fantastic Four to fight. They're just going on science fiction adventures.
Huh.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
I would love. It's not going to happen. He's no longer alive. But if Darwin Cook was alive and he would do the Fantastic Four doing science fiction adventures, I would be the first in line to buy that. And I don't buy any superhero books right now.
It would have been awesome. Yeah.
But stuff happens.
We can dream. Okay. Speaking of dreams, here's another read, rip, and slab. I wanted to do one for current comics that we know nothing about.
Okay.
So I made one. We can only judge these by their covers, by their characters. Let me get it. Because I know nothing about these. But these are the Hellfire Gala cover. That's the Marauders number 21, X-Force number 20, and X-Men 21. What do the numbers matter? We don't know. I just figured it. But I was like, how would you choose between these three?
Take random.
And that's
roll a die.
The White Queen, Jean Grey, and Rogue.
Burn all of them, scatter the ashes, and salt the ground.
Nope.
And then
You
sell
gotta
them as
read
NFTs.
one. You gotta read one. You gotta slab one, and you gotta rip one. Now, ripping one's not going to be a problem.
If I don't know anything about any of those, other than the logo looks like a women's magazine logo.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and I get the and that's fine.
The comics are all about the clothes they're wearing to a fancy dinner.
I just roll a die, whichever one came up. I completely random. Doesn't matter.
No, you have to make the decision. Even if it's random, make your decision. Let's hear your decision.
I'd have to roll the die and then
just make a decision. Just let's hear you. Whatever crazy thoughts you have, let's hear. Which one would you read?
Okay, based on what I'm familiar with the current Hickman verse of the X-Men.
Oh.
Read X-Men, read Marauders, slab X-Men, rip X-Force.
I would read the Emma Frost one just because I don't know as much about her as I do the other two characters. And I'd probably rip up Jean Grey because I don't like her as good as I like Rogue.
And read
that's
X-Men.
It. I mean, there's no real thought. There's just,
yeah, I know that's what we have to base.
It doesn't matter.
That's why I thought this would be kind of interesting because we know nothing about what's going on in these series very much. All we have are these covers. But you know what? I think I'm going to slab Marauders because I might like that cover best. But it's white. I don't know. Emma Frost or Rogue. You know what? I might. Rogue is showing underboob, so I'll slab that one. I think that Jean Grey cover I like the least. So I'll rip that.
Yeah.
And I'll read Marauders. Underboob gets the slab. That's the only thing I'm basing it on.
This was a 1-month event that it's all about catwalk and intrigues. Nothing more. And that's what they're wasting.
Yeah, obviously aimed at an audience that's not us. That's okay. I'm okay with them aiming at an audience that's not me because that's just what they've been doing since 1982. It's other people who can't.
But listen, this thing right now, it's so bad. If I won the Powerball, I would show up at Marvel the next day. Here's $6 million. Give me control of your properties now.
You think Disney's gonna look at you for $6 million? Ah,
Disney won't even let you in the door.
It's from Marvel, not for Disney.
Even
And it's a license deal. Yeah, it's $6 million. $6 million.
Underboob is in fact a word.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's been a word for a while, man. It's probably been a word for a good decade, if not longer. I mean, a word in kind of popular culture. I don't know who invented it, but
I just see this scenario one day, like a bunch of kids are in class and they're 30, 40 years from now, and they're trying to determine when the first usage of a popular term was. Like one kid gets like "get her done," you know, and another kid gets, I don't know, a different catchphrase like cybersecurity or whatever. And the third gets, and I got underboob? Really? Mom ain't going to help me with my homework on this one.
Yeah.
I think they know the name of the person who actually came up with the word international in the 19th century.
I guess the international has been around for a long time.
Whoops, what did I do? Okay. That screen didn't disappear from my little thing down below.
I had read, I don't know if there's any truth to it or not, because it sounds like a apocryphal story, but if it is true, it's funny. That Monster Cable tried to sue Disney, Pixar, when they used Monsters Incorporated as a title. And the defense lawyer brought a copy of the Oxford English Dictionary to the judge and showed him that the word monster had been in common use since like the 1600s. And he threw it out of court right there.
Yeah, you're not hip. Underboob's been around for a while.
I'll tell you when I realized I was not hip was when Kurt Cobain wore the same clothes that the Brady Bunch wore back in 1970s. That's all 1973 Greg Brady JCPenney catalog kind of thing. I was like, if that's coming back in style, I'm too old.
Yeah. And another comic I got, as we spoke of just before, not having runs, is Usagi Ojimbo, the Dragon Bellow Conspiracy, #3. And this is one of the reprints that's now in color. So this came out, I don't even know about. Like I was doing my video for the week and I was bemoaning the fact that they don't have the original date in the indicia anymore. And Sleepy Reader was saying that on my YouTube channel, it would be nice if they gave us like a half page in the back, little history of where this first, where and when.
Anywhere in there, what the original dates were.
Yeah. And this is a really interesting one. This may have been the first like extended story that Stan Sakai did in Usagi Ojimbo.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I'm really not sure.
Because most of his stories are 1, 2, 3 issues. I think this one went either 6 or 12. I can't remember. And you can tell by the pacing. This is paced so differently than a normal Usagi story, because there's so many characters in it and introduced. It's just, a 12-issue story is paced different than done in one. And you can really tell, like I said, it's really interesting reading this because Usagi's just not normally paced like this. Right. So it's kind of different. I mean, he's doing a good job of it, that's for sure.
There's a real website that you can go to that's called the Usagi Ojimbo Dojo, which will have all that information. It'll tell you which story arc it was and which issue numbers the originals were and things.
Of course, it's got a David Peterson, the Mouse Guard guy cover.
I love his coloring. His coloring is really good.
He's got a very muted scent,
He's got a very European color style to his art.
I was actually thinking about that a little more. I think it was Sleepy Reader who last week, maybe when we were on here, asked me about the coloring in some book that was, it was about Deep Beyond. He was asking me if the coloring was all computery.
Right.
And I said, no, it wasn't. And I think that I think this, this stuff from the 90s is why American comic books are computery at times, because the European comic books had a tradition of full color, where there'd be a lot, it'd be watercolor or painted color. So when they moved over to digital comics, that was their tradition.
I just thought of something. Yeah, go ahead.
What? And American comics had no tradition like that. So they were making up on the fly this computer stuff in the 90s. And it's only within the last 10 years, I think, that a lot of the colorists are foreign too. So that like mainstream comic book coloring really has developed its own traditions, but they're still kind of computery in a way, as opposed to the European
French artists. There are a lot of French artists who are now mainly influenced by manga, and they're definitely doing all their comics in computer.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying, even though they're doing all their comics on computer now, they had that sort of full color, watercolor and painted tradition. U.S. comics didn't have that. There was, if you were to pick 100 U.S. colorists, probably 10 of them knew how to do it the European way. The other 90 did color guides.
That says
and when they
5, 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and when they switched over to, this is a painted one. When they switched over to digital coloring, they had no tradition. That's why, and I think that's also why, as Eric Larson said, that Marvel, especially Marvel, digital coloring in the 90s has not aged well, because they were inventing it all. There was no tradition they were drawing from. They were like, "Ooh, look, I can make a gradation." Zoom, zoom. So they made gradations everywhere. Oh, look, I can make a highlight. So they made highlights everywhere. And part of this highlight thing also comes out of hand coloring guides at first, because there's a guy who used to work in the bullpen, Joe Rosas, and he was also a colorist. And he also colored a lot of like the Jim Lee X-Men stuff from the early 90s, because he started coloring with markers, and he started rounding things and putting highlights in them, just in color guides. Then the separators had to do that too. And then like those image guys started asking for him, so he was one of the first guys to start doing that as sort of a regular colorist. I think that was the tradition that kind of made itself into this pin lights everywhere tradition.
Did he use marker colors in the same way that Steve Root did?
No, well, the techniques, baby, but I don't know if Steve did. Was it shot right from the markers, the Steve Root stuff? I don't know.
Not, but he's done most of the marker things I'm thinking about are just pinups that he's done, like commissions, things like that. He didn't really do it.
Lots of guys do that. That's more finished work.
Right.
He was just like most colorists used Dr. Martin's dyes, because that's what Marvel and DC provided them. Marvel had big jars of Dr. Martin's dyes, and as a colorist, you'd come in and you'd fill up your little jars with their big jars. You'd come home and you'd color the. They used to use, it was photocopies, but they had it on a heavier paper that would handle the Dr. So they'd watercolor in the dyes.
Right.
But then those just went as guides to the separators. They didn't shoot, as opposed to. Have you seen like Valiant coloring from the 90s?
Yeah.
Valiant coloring looks different than all the other coloring.
It's more saturated.
Around it. Well, what that was they shot. It was full color. They shot right from the color guides. So instead of going to a separator who made the separations, they did the more expensive process of photographically taking a photo, making the print, photographically making the printing plates, which was more expensive, but it also meant the color guides had to be perfect. The color guides were the original art they were printing from.
Right.
So that made it a little different.
Something you're talking about the pen lights and everything, the early digital coloring. If they had used somebody's technique, say like Ken Stacy, as a guide, I wonder if it would have looked better. Because he was doing things in airbrush.
Yeah, but he was kind of he was in that plastic tradition, and plastic in art just means rounded.
But he had an interesting color sense that a lot of other people didn't have, especially when he did airbrush.
I think this stuff is more like Ken Stacy than it's not.
But it's not nowhere near as good, though.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's not, but it was kind of in the same, because Ken Stacy used a lot of white highlights too, but differently.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't have them just willy-nilly everywhere. But it's funny now to see. It's like so many colorists are worldwide now that there is no coloring tradition in U.S. comics.
Well, you brought up Valiant earlier, and one thing I didn't like was when, and this was not only true of his Valiant work, but also true of his Dark Horse work. Later on in his career, when Barry Windsor Smith would color his own work, and we're talking like the storyteller work.
Right.
Just the sheer amounts of purple and yellow that he used.
Pinks and purples, yeah. Crazy.
It's like the Los Angeles Lakers couldn't get a uniform because Barry used up all the yellow and the purple.
You know what's funny? I'm noticing a lot of it's not here. A lot of interesting, like I noticed it in Homesick Pilots, and I noticed it in Bitter Root. And it's other places too. It's like in like in Homesick Pilots, I specifically noticed it when it was a dappled sunshine scene. There were a couple they're outside under a tree, but they were all colored in light blue. So it's like the colorist was just trying. It wasn't even like pink with a little light blue in it. It was light blue. And I've noticed a lot of that in comics in the last few years.
So did they look like Smurfs?
No, they didn't. He was trying to get the feeling that they were in cool shadow. That's what he was going for. And a lot of times, like in Bitter Root, all the characters, most of the cast is black people, so they have dark brown skin, except they're colored purple all the time. Because he's going for this mood, not a Windsor Smith purple, but a kind of dark purple. Because he's going for this mood when they're in shadow. But I've noticed a lot of that kind of expressionistic color in the comics I read a lot of, where where the color has more to do with the mood of the scene than it does with any kind of realism.
I wonder how that same art would come off if it was in black and white.
Yeah.
I'd just be interested to see the contrast between the two.
Right. Because the color really does set the mood in a lot of stuff now. Such as Department of Truth. Issue number 12, is this? 12. The art in this is all about shape and color a lot of times.
That's more like a Bill Sienkiewicz kind of a...
Yeah, a lot of Bill Sienkiewicz-ish stuff in here.
No pencil lines at all that you can see, right?
Right. And this one was all about black helicopters. Because like that, each one is usually about some sort of myth or conspiracy that the Department of Truth, once again, in the Department of the Truth's world, if too many people believe in a myth or conspiracy, it becomes real. And I also find it interesting the way they do word balloons in this, because sometimes I find, like in sort of Bill Sienkiewicz's artwork, when you do regular word balloons, they stand out. But in this one, they've got these sort of, let me see if I can show you close.
Are they angled?
They're not only angled, but they're white, and they have a second outline around them, a thin outline.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Those
are almost like hexagonal.
Yeah, and they kind of blend in with the because like I said, one of the problems I have is when you get like this sort of like it's Sienkiewicz's artwork that's all about organic shapes that the paint makes. When you put ellipses all next to it, it can be. And I've seen like some painted books like lower the opacity on the balloons to get it to blend in a little more.
Right.
And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I've been liking these guys' balloon. What's his name? Letterer Aditya Bidikar. I've been liking the shapes that he's been doing with these. I think it blends in with the artwork pretty well.
Do they ever have like a certain shape just only appears when a certain character speaks?
Let me see. I think they're doing some captions like that.
I just wondered.
Yeah, they're doing some captions like that.
Way to visually,
yeah,
make the point come across which character the dialogue's coming from.
They didn't make anyone speak in red on black, thankfully.
That's one of the things I liked about Sandman was every time Morpheus spoke, he was white letters on a black background. And when I got a page of original Sandman art, I didn't realize until the end, but it was just an overlay that Todd Klein put down over.
Sometimes they'd stat those too at Marvel, and you'd paste down the black and white. But that's who did a lot of that was what's his name, Walt Kelly in Pogo Possum. He used a lot of different balloons and fonts for all the different characters.
Yeah.
But the red lettering on black reminded me. I said I read all my comics twice before I put them away, so I reread the Elric Dreaming City first issue, which had that terrible lettering on it. And I have to say, it read better not reading the introduction. We were talking about what order they were going to go in, because they said they're going to produce them, and they said they're going to print them in chronological order. And we were like, well, what's chronological? The time they came out, because he went back and did stories before and later, and what's chronological? I guess it's in their publication order. But anyway, at the beginning of the first issue, there was this whole big what has gone before block of text that told you all about his cousin who he was in love with, and his cousin who was betraying him, and this and that, and all this other stuff, which I guess was background that you didn't actually know at the beginning of the story.
Right.
And I read that when I read it through the first time. The next time through, a week later, I said, I'm not bothering to read that. And the story read so much better. Without all that sort of what came before stuff floating around in my head, I paid attention to the story that was going on now. What was that?
You didn't have any kind of indication that background material was going to show up in the story later.
No, and it didn't. It really didn't. It was like completely not necessary and just cluttered my head the first time.
So it was like you went directly to The Hobbit and you skipped the Silmarillion.
Yeah. I tried reading the Silmarillion once. Whew. Like everybody else.
I like the Silmarillion.
There's always one or two Tolkien nut jobs who like the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
And then there's 8 or 9 others who are like, ah.
Yeah, there are.
The Silmarillion. But this was also another issue of Norse mythology came out. excellent as ever. Mark Buckingham working over Craig Russell this time, and it just looked nice. I mean, Buckingham
with Neil before on Sandman. So.
It just looks terrific. The artwork. He's working over layouts. I don't know how.
Did Laverne Kandinsky do the coloring on that?
Let me see. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Just terrific. Hold on. I just have to show you this picture of Loki, just because it's such a wonderful gesture. Here we go. Little Loki right there. I just love those two panels of Loki just pointing his finger, and then we get saying shush. Just terrific artwork. I have not seen Mark Buckingham artwork in a lot of years, but this was really good stuff.
You know, there's going to be somebody out there years from now who's going to be watching these videos. That doesn't look anything like Loki, and they're Marvel. Yeah.
Variant cover by David Mack. Who did this cover? I don't know. Like Craig, I think that's Craig Russell.
It should say somewhere in the indicia.
It should. I noticed. Like that. I noticed on one company I was very confused. I was like, "Why does it say like Mora down on the UPC?" It doesn't say it on this one, but on the UPC above had like the first 4 letters of the artist's name. I forget which company it was. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So you know which art, in case you don't know which artist variation cover you got, they put his name on the UPC.
Was the cover art signed?
Yeah, I don't see Craig Russell's signature on this. Oh no, it is there. Pardon me.
Okay.
He hid it amongst a bunch of little scribbles.
Gotcha.
Not easy to find. 2020. There's even a year. Now that these scribbles start to make sense. And the last comic I got for the week was a Cerebus in Hell.
What is that?
Crisis on Infinite Quarantine. And I got 1636 of 2287. And I have to say, it was better. I feared I wouldn't like Dave Sim coronavirus jokes at all, because sometimes I'm not always there's always like a thing. But this issue was just insane. It was just all because this is Cerebus in Hell, so all the characters are in hell. There's Virgil and Dante there too, who are our hosts, and it was just like everybody in hell was just freaking out over coronavirus. So it was. I found this issue funny, which was good, and it's all comic strips.
Did you ever find Dave Sim?
What was that?
Did you ever find Dave Sim funnier when he's making jokes on broader subjects than when he's pointing at individuals?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends. It's like some of the issues I didn't find as funny were stuff I didn't like. He did one issue that had a lot to do with Canadian politics. Okay, I'm just not going to find that fun. He did a whole issue on like the Real Housewives jokes. I'm just not really interested in the Real Housewives, so I'm not really interested in the Real Housewives jokes. But most of his stuff is broader than that, or at least stuff I'm more interested in.
Gotcha. That
holy smokes!
Yeah, Terrence has joined us. That Strange Death of Alex Raymond should be out.
It should be. I don't know where it is. Because he's not printing it. Somebody else is. All right, since Comic Crack is here, I'm going to do another Rip, Read, and Tear. So let's see what we got. DC 1983.
Yes, you did. That's the magic word there.
What was that?
Terrence said he sees that he missed under boob.
He missed Underboob. Can you believe it? That's of his alley. He'd buy comics especially for Underboob. Just like I slabbed that one for Underboob. Okay. I call this one. Let's get rid of that. The big as in physical size. DC books of 1983.
Treasure?
Where? Nope.
No?
Just thickness.
Oh yeah, like the dollar special.
Right. We've got Swamp Thing, which is the official adaptation of the hit movie.
Mm-hmm.
We've got All-Star Squadron, and we've got GI Combat.
This is easy for me.
That's easy for you?
Yep.
What do you got?
I would slab Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would read GI Combat, and I would rip up All-Star Squadron.
You know, I might be on the same page as you. Because I can't imagine. I don't want to read more Roy Thomas All-Star Squadron.
Who did the... I've seen that Swamp Thing cover before. Who did that one?
I don't know.
Does that remind me of?
Send me some Underboob links. Rip Sodden, read GI Combat. I think we're all on the same page here. What about you, Paolo? You have something different?
Yeah, I'm gonna read GI Combat, slab All-Star Squadron, and rip Swamp Thing.
Ah, he's gonna slab All-Star Squadron. That's different. Now, why would you slab All-Star Squadron?
For no reason at all.
No reason at all. You just like the big magenta cover, so you'll go with that.
Yeah, people are gonna walk into the living room and notice all the magenta. That thing is really loud and garish. Yes, it is.
I wonder who that giant magenta guy is.
I don't know, but I got a sunburn like that several years ago at an air show.
Huh. Huh. Rip Star Squad. Yeah, that one turned out not to be too hard. Let's go for one more.
Comic that's a movie adaptation? No, that's a rip.
Depends on which movie adaptation it is.
It's the Swamp Thing movie.
Yeah.
From the 80s.
Fair enough. But there are some other movie adaptations I wouldn't rip off. Matter of fact, there's one which is not available in English unless you find it in Heavy Metal magazine that I think is better than the actual movie is, and that is Steranko's adaptation of Outland.
Okay.
Never read that. I've always wanted to.
Steranko's cut version of it is great.
I liked the Blade Runner movie adaptation, though, of course, it's not as good as the movie, but it's actually pretty darn good. You know, of course, it's Al Williamson. So.
Yeah, well, Al Williamson also did a really nice adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, yeah, that one's good, too. And this is what I call the cream of the crop of 1983 in DC. We got some Great Darkness Saga, Legion of Superheroes. We've got some Perez and Wolfman Teen Titans. And we've got Walter Simonson on X-Men Titans.
Oh, gosh.
No, I don't have my Legion anymore, but I have a collected edition of it. I still have my
that one
Titans. Too. All three of these are good reads. Though I don't specifically remember that Teen Titans. But all the Perez Titans.
Yeah, I've already figured out which ones I would do.
That Teen Titans is fun. It's got the Omega Man. I think if it's not in this issue, it's around here because they meet the Omega Man while they go to Tamaran.
For me, I would read the Legion of Superheroes because I don't know as much about that one as I do the other two.
You've never read the Great Darkness Saga?
Nope.
Oh, you got to read that one then.
I've read very little Legion at all. Then I would slab the new Teen Titans, and I would rip up the X-Men and Titans just because I'm not fond of crossovers between universes like that.
That's one of the best crossovers between universes in the history of crossovers.
That's like saying that's the best knife.
But no. This is Chris Claremont at the top of his game. Walt Simonson doing a great job.
I like
Walt
Simonson a lot, but X-Men Titans.
The dialogue is very good here.
I'll have to reread that one. It's still in my. I've been meaning to reread that X-Men Titans for a while now. I'll have to do that. I remember enjoying it a whole lot, and that's what I think with the Legion of the Superheroes is the first time I ever read a Darkseid story. I had never read any of the New Gods before then.
Mm-hmm.
It's
the first time that Darkseid is a real badass outside of a Kirby book.
Yeah. They did such a good job because I think it's the first time he showed up after Kirby, and they just did such a good job setting it up.
You had the Secret Society of Supervillains before, as well as the New Gods revival by Jerry Conway.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about. I don't even count.
This is the first time
nobody read them.
Yeah, nobody wants to remember those, but this is the first time that is a real badass. If people are like Darkseid today, it's because this comic exists.
Yeah,
I agree.
That is the. No, I think I'm gonna slab the Titans. I mean, slab X-Men Titans, just because I like that book so much. I'll slab it. I'm gonna read this new Teen Titans and have to rip that Legion of Superheroes. Oh, I like it. They're all good. It's a tough rip.
Yeah, I'm going to read Legion and rip New Teen Titans and slab X-Men Titans. Here's the thing. This going to, even though they had an alien on the team, the fact that Robin goes into outer space doesn't sit well with me. And I don't mind Trigon trying to invade Earth.
Right.
But I do mind them going into outer space. Having a supernatural angle on Earth for the New Teen Titans sounds more realistic than the team being able to leave the planet. It's always felt odd to me. It doesn't really make sense when I explain it. It's just a feeling.
Well, how did they do it? How did they leave the planet?
I don't remember.
The reason I'm asking you, if you've got the X-Men that have basically, well, it's the Avengers or the Quinjet, which is basically an SR-71 Blackbird.
Right, because the New Teen Titans aren't the Justice League.
Right, but it's not a huge leap to think that they would have something that they could
But they're not the Justice League, and while Starfire did come from outer space, she was on the run from a slave ship. She didn't have a transport of her own.
Sidekicks.
So it's not like they could
have spaceships.
Yeah, exactly.
You get that on a T-shirt. Sidekicks.
It's like Batman better without Robin. So if they send him into space, I'm okay with that.
No, I just said Legion of Superheroes was the first Darkseid story I read. X-Men Titans was the time I discovered it was pronounced Darkseid and not Darkseid.
I never had that problem. I don't understand what some
people... If you just think about the word,
because
Darkseid makes more sense logically.
Well, that's because S-E-I in English is Eid. I'm told in German it's I. It's an I. We pronounce the E in English if it's first. I'm told that in German they pronounce it as an I. That's why everybody thought. Lots of people thought it was Darkseid.
Well, it's German, don't they add like 3 more syllables after that have really
of course they would. I'm no expert in languages. I just read or somebody told me that.
I just think German just intimidates other languages, just how harsh it is in comparison.
Well, I think that's the way Kirby spelled. That's why Kirby spelled it like that too.
Yeah, because he spoke Yiddish.
Well, I also heard, I never even thought about this as a kid. It just never struck me as like, at one time there was a question whether people pronounced it submariner or submariner.
Oh yeah.
I was like, it's got to be Submariner. It's the only one that makes sense.
They would occasionally have somebody in the comic shout, "It's Submariner," and put E's in there too. Just, I guess they made fun
of the submarine. He's not Submariner.
Yeah. The Submariner. Like I always said, Magneto.
That I could see.
Yeah, because it's a magnet.
A magneto is a specific part that you put in a car's ignition.
A magneto.
Like before they had electronic ignitions. No, a magneto.
A magneto. No, a magneto. I think the specific part was magneto. That's why they would call them that, not magneto, which is what I call them because of magnets. I'm not 100% sure right now, but I think that's the way it went. I don't know.
I'm curious as to what issue that Terrence has with the word Cimmerian.
Well, since it's since that replacement for Celtics, it should be Cimmerian.
I think I always pronounced that Cimmerian. That's how I pronounced it as a kid. Conan the Cimmerian.
The actual Cimmeria was in Eastern Europe, going into the steppes of Russia.
Well, I figure out however Tim pronounces it. It's you pronounce it the opposite way, and you'll be right.
That's why we need Tim on here another day, so he can teach us how to pronounce everything wrong, so we get it right.
Well, that's one of the things about Tolkien scholarship is they actually have recordings of him saying the words, and they know how they're supposed to be pronounced. Robbie Howard, a little early for that.
Just confuses me all, Scott. I say it instinctively to how Paolo just said it. With a K sound.
It was the Romans who did the KS shift, turning it from Celtic to Celtic, because if the Romans pronounced the C before an E and an I differently than before an A-O or U, and that ended up affecting Latin words for all the Latin languages.
So it's like I before E except after C.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or when sounded like an A, as in neighbor and way. Boy, and it was hard to find those Marvel Gala covers. Who bought them? The comic. I saw them on the Comic Crypt of Castle Hills channels. He got them this week from. He orders from Midtown Comics. So I was like, oh, let me go find them on the internet, and I'll do a rip reading slab of them. Holy cow! It was like. No one had just doing a search for them. I had to keep doing searches until one showed up, and the one with like Emma Frost was like a tiny version of it. Even I was like, "What?" I was like, "Why are these so hard to find?" I guess not a ton of people have them. Oh, speaking of not hard to find, I was discussing this. Where is it? This issue of Spawn. You know what the print run on this was?
A ridiculous high amount.
That's from
somewhere.
Image.
What was that?
That's from Image, right?
Yeah, it's from Image.
125,000.
No, it's a Spawn number 1. I think it was about 700.
Somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000. I think he figured out 450,000 because they know how many autographs. Todd McFarlane did a 1 in 250 autographed version. And I think there was something like, 1,600 of those. So that's how you can figure out how big the print run was. So I found that interesting but Spawn has been It is amazing to me how much of a big seller Spawn has been recently, with its alternate covers and returnability and stuff.
The number 300 did a good job making people care about it again. And,
Yeah, it did.
And now it's a new Spawn number 1 issue for the first time since what?
92?
No, there was the Curse of the Spawn. There was
Okay.
As far as spin-offs go, there
Right.
was Curse of the Spawn, which was even then it was around what 96.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a while since we had a Spawn number 1. There haven't even been any miniseries.
No.
There used to be a few. I think the last one was Spawn the Impaler, the one that retconned Dracula as a Spawn.
Yeah, he said he realized that none of today's kids have gotten a chance to get a Spawn number 1, so he wanted to put some out.
Mm-hmm.
I found that amusing. Well, we're coming up to our end time, so we may as well say goodnight to everyone. We've been up 2 hours and 45 minutes. It flew by tonight.
Good night, Gracie.
But we had time to talk about city planning, cityscaping.
Word origins.
Got to give it to him. He's a hell of a salesman. Like Paolo said, he really did a good job with 300 getting on people's radars again. Yeah, he did. I liked
I must be using so far then.
Even though I didn't buy it, I started buying it after that because it was the last $3 book on my radar. So everybody have a good night out there. Paolo can go to bed now.
Don't buy any non-fungible tokens.
No, you're going to make him scream and smash stuff. We said it enough tonight. Have a good night, y'all.
Goodbye.
Bye.